In today's video, I will show you how to open and edit quotes in EstimatorXpress. This video assumes that you have created and costed your estimate. If you'd like to know how to do that, please see the other videos that detail how to do an estimate in EstimatorXpress. On the right-hand side, we can see the job has already been costed. All the build phases are completed, and the build program has been finished. If you haven't done this, you can't create the quote. So please ensure that you've costed the job and you've created your build program. Once we've created the estimate and finished the build program, we then need to ensure that all the details that will appear on the quote are completed. Therefore, I need to click on Assumptions and Omissions, like so, which will bring up the details on Assumptions and Omissions. At the top here, we have our assumptions. I've pre-completed some details on the gardening and landscaping. That is one of the assumptions. I have also included some omissions, detailing what is not included in the gardening and the landscaping. Once you're happy with that data, we click on OK, and that information will be saved to appear on the quote. We then go to provisional sums. And of course, once again, we add any provisional sums in that are required. Therefore, we give it a name, a short name that appears in the reports, which of the build phases it appears in, what location the item is found in the particular job, and the cost that is associated. Once you're happy with the provisional sums, we click on OK, and then click on the client contact details. Once again, we enter in the information as required, giving the full address, contact number, and email where applicable, where available. We then, of course, include the site details as well. We give the site a name and whether the site address is at the client address. Once we're happy, we click on Close. This will then bring up the written documents page. I'm going to create a quote for the main estimate here, so I click on the tab beside Quote for Main Estimate, and a few seconds later, the quote for main estimate appears. We've now completed all the details on the main quote template page. There is a little more information that we do need to complete before we go to the quote itself, and that is found in Job Settings. We go to the down arrow here and click on Overhead, Profit and Inflation. This allows me to adjust any of the overhead markups that we need to add in, the profit level that we'd like to achieve, and of course, inflation rates. Once that information has been completed, we can then go to Quote and Outputs, click on the down arrow, click on Written Documents. We will now run through the main settings. We will work top to bottom in a logical order, so you can see exactly how altering the main settings adjusts how the quote appears. First of all, we will adjust the quote type. This will allow us to order the quote by build phase, the estimating calculator order, or indeed the location in the property. I'm going to go with build phase order. Next, we have the data filter. This allows us to select the resources that are used in the job. For example, by deselecting all and selecting labor, we would have a labor-only job. We next have the data filter. This allows us to select the resources that are used in the job. For example, if I deselect a select all option and click on labor, that would give us a labor-only job. In the example I'm running through today, however, it is for a large double store extension. Therefore, I'll select all, I'll click on OK, and all the resources will be used on the job. If I scroll down a little, I can then select the contents of the quote and what it should appear. If I scroll down a little, I then get to the contents option of the main settings. This allows us to select or deselect any of the items that you would like to appear on the quote. I'm going to select them all. So I want a letter to appear on the quote, thanking your customer for their inquiry. I want to include all the assumptions and omissions, provisional sums, summary, and so on. However, if you deselect any of these options, it simply means it won't appear on the quote. If I scroll down a little further, I can select whether to include inflation or not, particularly important on jobs that may be 6 or 12, 18 months down the line, where inflation could actually add a sizable cost difference to the job, and therefore potentially lose you money if you underquote by not including inflation. We can then select the VAT option, whether to have it as a percentage, a fixed amount, or input only. Finally, we have the font styles, and as you may imagine, it will allow us to select the font style, size, and whether it's in italic, and of course, the color. Once you're happy with everything selected, hit apply, and those options will be applied to the quote at hand. Now we've completed the main settings, it is time to click through the various settings to adjust the various options for the cover pages, the letter that's included, assumptions and omissions, and so on. So to begin with, make certain I'm on the right page. I click on cover page, which will bring up the settings for your cover page. The first option I have here is the text box. So I can key in the information as I require. Enter in the text that I need, and the software will actually correct the spelling if incorrect. I can address any information that I need, and indeed I can include a logo should I see fit. I've previously already selected it, but if I hit browse, it will allow me to select from my system the logo that is being used. Once you're happy, you hit apply, and that information has now appeared. I then next click on letter, which will allow me to adjust the letter that appears for your client. To adjust the letter, simply click into the text box here on the right and key in any adjustments that you see fit. And of course, you can give the paragraph a name as you need. Once you've made all the adjustments that you need, you can hit apply, and that will add that information into the job you've done, into the text you've edited for that letter. And of course, you can hit save to library, and that will save that information for future use. Next, we select the assumptions and omissions. On the right-hand side, you will see two text boxes, and this allows us to enter any text we'd like for the headings for assumptions and omissions. Once you're happy with that information, hit apply, and indeed, if you'd like to save it for future use, simply click on Save to Library. Once we've completed entering the information on assumptions and omissions, we can click through to provisional sums. And this allows us, as you would imagine, to adjust the text that appears, the provisional sums that we entered in earlier on during the creation of the estimate. Again, as always, I can hit apply, and of course save to library to save that information for future use. Once I'm happy with information entered for provisional sums, I'll click through to the summary. Once the screen appears, and perhaps as you'd imagine, by selecting or deselecting any of the tick boxes, it will include or exclude any of the phases, the summaries, the material summaries, etc., that you see on screen now. If you deselect that information and hit apply, it will of course remove that information from the quote. And of course, if you have it ticked, it will include that information on the quote. Again, if I hit save to library, it will save the settings for the summary screen for future use. Essentially, with all the adjustments we are making here, it adjusts the way that the end quote will appear to your customer. It allows us to totally and utterly customize how the document looks, feels, and appears for your client, so that you can see how this quite literally affects how the quote appears for you and your customers. What I will do is I'll remove some of the summaries and some of the totals so that you can actually see this happening in real time in the real world. On the right hand side here, you'll see the various breakdowns, the summaries, and so on, so forth. What I will do is I'm going to remove a material, labour, and plant and subcontract summary in just a moment. First of all, I will scroll down. And here we go. As I scroll down, you can see the various materials summaries, the labour summaries, and so on. That is them appearing within the software. So I'm going to scroll back up to where I was there. Now, if I click apply in the bottom corner here, you'll see, in fact, I'll keep the material summary here, but I'll remove the subcontract and sundry items. So quite literally, we're only going to see the material summary stay within the quote. I will click on apply. In just a moment, so I'll have a think, and it will remove the relevant summaries that I've told it to remove. Now if I scroll down, you can actually see it's only the material summary that remains. The rest have been removed. And now what I can do, after having removed the various summaries and breakdowns, I can actually add them back into the software. It's a very easy and straightforward process, and it's the exact opposite of what we did to remove them. I simply go to the right hand side and tick on the tick boxes to include the summaries as we need. I hit apply, and literally in a matter of moments, the software adds those details back in. So if I scroll down here on the right, you can see we have the main summary, material summary, the labour summary, the plant summary, everything that we removed and then told software to add back in has been added, has been completed. And in a short summary, what this means to you is that you can quickly add or remove various phases, various summaries, various breakdowns into the quote. So if you're unsure of exactly how you'd like it to appear and you'd like to get an idea of how it will show for you, or if you have a particularly difficult customer who keeps on changing their mind, you can quickly and easily make adjustments to any of the summaries, any of the breakdowns, and the software will almost instantly update it for you. Once we are happy with all the information that will appear on the summary and on the various breakdowns, once we've clicked through the various headings, we've ensured the information is all there in terms of how we would like it to appear. We can then go to the acceptance part of the quotation. So if I click through on the left here to acceptance, this is where it shows the acceptance for the quotation. This allows your customer to sign off the quote. And of course, you or one of your staff will do the same, obviously signed and dated to the job costing that has been agreed. But of course, any of these details, any of this text can be adjusted simply by altering the text here on the right hand side. It's a simple and straightforward process. Any adjustments that you like to make can be adjusted here, and the text that you adjust will automatically appear here on the left hand side when we enter it here on the right. So I'll give you an example of that information, including all details as agreed. There we go. If I hit apply now, like so, it's now added that information in there. So the acceptance of the quotation, of the estimation, has now been completed. Then finally, we can go to terms and conditions. And this is where the software allows you to include your own terms, for whatever they may be. I've actually pre-selected and copied into memory some terms and conditions. So I'm going to press Ctrl and B on my keyboard, or right mouse click and go to paste. And the software then drops in that information for the terms and conditions. So if I hit apply now, it will now drop those terms into the job. And that is now there, ready for you to complete, for you to print off. As a reminder, when working on the terms and conditions, or indeed the quote for the main estimate, I should really say here, this is actually the main job, you can zoom in and out by using the zoom in or zoom out buttons here. At any point, you can go to the next page simply by clicking on next or previous, or you can of course go to the first page simply by clicking on go to first page. You can of course print the document simply by clicking on print and selecting the relevant printer on your system there, if you have one. So you can obviously select the printer to print it to. You can obviously save the documentation to be sent out to save to Word. And again, that's a straightforward process of just saving it to Word. You can of course save it to a PDF. Again, it will save in a very, very similar way to, say, a Word printout. So obviously you can do that. You can of course export it to pretty much any file type that you see fit. And of course, you can save information that you have created to the system, to EstimatorXpress, to use in the future. So even if you've forgotten when you've been working through the the quote for main estimate calculator, if I go to save to the library, it will actually bring up this screen here, and I'll ask you which of the adjustments that you've made as you've gone along should it save. It defaults to selecting them all, so it's going to save everything that I've previously done as we've gone through this estimate, through the quotation. So click on OK. Now all the adjustments we've made as we've gone along there, it is saved. It means that anything you've done now, you can actually then use in the future for the defaults for the jobs that you're doing. So it saves you having to repeatedly do what we've done this afternoon. And of course, from this screen, we can make adjustments to pretty much anything that appears in the quote for your customer. Indeed, if you would like to adjust the job name itself, the job details, we simply click on Edit Job Details. We can alter the names here, so any of the details for this particular job can be adjusted. Move the 225mm name on it, and of course maybe the cavity closers to simplify the information that is appearing for the customers. And essentially, one of the major benefits here with EstimatorXpress, aside from it doing all the estimating, the quotation for you in minutes, it allows you to make any of the adjustments that you need to make for your customers in seconds. So it no longer takes days or weeks for you to get back to your clients. It can be done in a matter of hours, and your customers updated with information they need to see, and therefore jobs won. So I've made all the adjustments that I need. I hit Save Changes. Now all that information has been saved into the quotation for the main estimate. And essentially that is how EstimatorXpress and the quote for the main estimate is done.